Right. I'll let you guys sit down. Is this the right order?
Yes.
I think, Thomas, you were going to sit here. Or
Am I on that sofa?
No, this works.
Yeah. Cool.
Welcome, everyone, to the first of the panel talks here at the Games Academy Expo. My name's Lee Walton. I've got a few industry guests here we're going to talk to. So today we're going to talk about, this first talk, we're going to talk about tools and pipelines. I'm going to pick your brains on what you guys are up to. I'm going to let the guests introduce themselves from this point on. It's Daisy, Seb, and Thomas. So I'm going to grab a seat here, and we're going to let Daisy, if you just let us know what you're up to right now.
Yeah. So I'm a alumni programmer. I'm currently working for a company called Kilo. They are a maritime training solution, and I get to work on some fun software for training up people like the Navy on bridge training and rules and regulations. I think that sums it up.
Sounds great.
Hi, my name's Sebastian. I'm an environment artist at Rocksteady, and I recently released Suicide Squad. So I guess that's pretty much me.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Apologies for saying Seb, but do you mind me calling you
No,
Seb?
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay,
Seb's
no
fine,
worries.
it's perfect.
Cool.
I'm Thomas. I'm an associate motion capture technician. I put people in skin-tight suits, cover them in balls, and make them dance for me. That's kind of my job.
Brilliant. And first question is to just, because I'm fairly new to the Games Academy, and you guys are all alumni of us, or where else have you studied?
I graduated from UAL, University of Arts London.
Okay, and you guys are from here, from Falmouth?
Yeah.
Okay, so nice mixture. Welcome to have you visited us before?
This is my first time. It's a really nice place.
Cool, that's
Really
great
nice.
to hear. We're going to talk about tools. Sounds like you might be using sort of different tools in your different areas. So the main thing to ask is maybe first of all, because we've got students here, what explain the differences between what you learned as a student here, the tools you used here versus what you're using now. Is there a small difference? Daisy, is there any differences?
So with the actual tools that I use, throughout university I use C# and Unity, and I still use that now, but I'm much more involved with the art pipeline because
Right.
the other developer I work with is a programmer and a 3D modeler. He's very senior, he's amazing, and he gives me lots of tips, but I get more involved with the optimization of the models and how to integrate them into the engine to have them work effectively with my programming, because I move a lot of things mechanically within VR through programming, so I have
Right.
to integrate that with the modeling, positioning, the topology, the texturing, and using light maps and things. So I get a lot more involved in that sense, and I've learned it in a deeper sense now.
Yeah. So you're very much part of the whole art pipeline, and you're involved in all of that. It sounds like.
Yeah, I speak with my coworker a lot about the models that they make, and they say, like, do you need anything specifically for the mechanics that you're making within the simulator? So I get more involved, and I say, actually, like, this might better tweak like this, it will work better in VR with the physics, with the connection point of the hands, and just like really small details like that.
Okay, yeah, and you. So which game are you using?
Using Unity.
Unity, right. Mm-hmm. So you obviously had a bit of experience here using that. So that's really interesting. You're tweaking very small details about your pipeline all the time.
Yeah, it's a big focus on all the small details because everything that mainly runs off the Quest 3. So you're essentially trying to run a simulator off a mobile app.
Yeah.
So we focus a lot on doing a lot of the programming and the physics and lots of checks that would normally run on a local game. I actually do on a server because it's all multiplayer as well.
Right. That's really so. It's not very off the shelf, as it were.
It's very niche, very specific,
yeah.
and I think that's the nicest part about it is when you get to do something really niche.
Yeah, that's really cool. Sebastian, what about your experience of?
Yes, pretty much the same. Of course, it's like a bigger studio, so it's a lot more diluted, I guess, because you're more focused on what you do.
You've got a narrower range, perhaps,
yeah, exactly.
in your
Yeah,
studio.
but I think the same principles apply. You're still using the same softwares.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit more, niche. Like I use a lot more Substance Designer,
right?
Softwares like that. But the entire process is the same, pretty much.
Yeah. Have you worked at other studios and seen a different pipeline, or is this your first?
I know this is my first studio.
Yeah. So you're learning. Would you say there was things that were, unique and bespoke at your studio compared to your studies? Is that?
Of course, like when you're studying, the process is a lot more different. So, for instance, you go from block out to finished piece, and you're in charge of like lighting, composition, all these kind of things. Whereas that is a lot more diverse. It's
Yeah.
like you have like level designers, you have lighting artists, and then
Okay.
there's different components in environment art that do different things.
So you're in a smaller area because you've
section,
got a
yeah.
bigger team and you can all specialize.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That sounds quite familiar.
Yeah, exactly,
To a
yeah.
bigger studio, take advantage of the numbers. Thomas, how's your experience compare to study pipelines versus industry pipeline?
I use almost nothing that I used at university.
Oh, okay.
'Cause, I work with an optical mocap system, so
Right,
they've
it's a-
got their own
it's a
like
proprietary
software
system,
that needs
yeah.
to be used. Yeah, so I work with
Fantastic.
Vicon Shogun. We've done quite a lot of macro scripting in it.
Right.
So our pipeline that we run all of our data through has things that filter our data to make it smoother
Right.
and fill in any gaps kind of thing, so
it.
we don't have to do all that manually.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I use a lot of motion builder and Unreal stuff, getting like pre-visualization going and character retargeting onto different rigs. The only kind of thing that I use still now that I used at uni is motion builder, really.
Right.
But even that I don't use in the way I used at uni.
Okay.
So kind of nothing.
I mean, how did that go? Was that on the job training, or did you?
Yeah.
Did someone at the studio help you to learn these
Yeah,
things?
so my senior, he's completely taken the virtual production pipeline
Right.
sort of as his baby project, or
Right.
one of his baby projects.
Right.
He's sort of hammered out how to get our one-to-one data so that we can map our volume out, build a scene in Unreal, and it relates in the volume through streaming it into Motion Builder and then streaming Motion Builder into Unreal so
Yeah.
that we can have live like prop interaction stuff in Unreal.
So, the question for all of you then is kind of, so how often does this pipeline change? Is it quite a fixed thing where you are? It might vary by studios, but is it quite fixed where you are because it's a bigger?
Yeah, because the cycles of games are so long.
Yeah.
It's like, what, 3-5 years?
So it's stable for the cycle of a game.
Yeah, exactly.
perhaps?
Yeah, you kind of like figure out at the beginning, and then you cement it in that, and then maybe you might tweak it in between, but pretty much it stays the same throughout the process.
So for you guys in code kind of area, is it less stable? Are you tweaking that all the time? Or?
I would say
Yeah.
it's kind of developed a little bit over time as the project's gone along. I've focused on building up a pipeline document that is company and client facing. So for a client that's interested in the software, they understand how it gets built, the process we go through, and for anybody new joining, they understand the focuses that they need to make when they're working on the software as well.
So your pipeline is like publicly available in a way, or is it just for clients, or is it public?
It's kind of for people who would be interested in purchasing it. They go, well, how does this work? Well, we are requesting a feature. We're going to pay money to get it added in. How is this going to work? And they go, well, this is the pipeline. This is the process we go through. Are you happy with all of this? Is there anything that you would like to be done differently or something like that?
It's a good indicator of how important a pipeline is.
Yeah.
That you're literally selling that to people and talking about. We can use other words for pipeline, like just how we do things.
Yeah.
This is how we make stuff, right? This is our process. So we use that fancy pipeline word, but it's just like, so as a company, you're explaining that to your clients. That's really interesting. Thomas, does it change a lot for you? Sounds like you're a bit more
No,
tweaking,
actually it doesn't.
It doesn't?
Yeah,
Okay.
our pipeline is, but because I work across loads of different projects all at the same time, we have to have a pipeline that really easily fits in with everyone. So we've got a really, really generic pipeline that works very well, where we just kind of export an animation skeleton at the end of it, and then the animators do with that what they need.
Okay. Do you document that yourself, or is that?
No,
I'm
you're only an
just-
associate. I'm not paid to do documentation.
You've got that prepared for you. You've got documentation.
All of the pipeline and everything that was already sort of pretty much sorted out by the time that I joined the company.
Yeah, so they had a good system for training you and learning that pipeline.
Yeah.
It's quite reassuring for people that might be like, hey, you're not using anything you learned. Well, don't worry, they teach you that on the job. They don't expect you to know custom pipelines, right? It would be unfair.
No, I got dropped into the deep end with that a little bit in the first week.
Of course, but you survived.
Yeah.
Good news. We're curious about what kind of tools, is it a combination of software? Sebastian, you're doing 3D environment.
3D
So
environments,
what software are you using for that? You said Substance.
So you use the
Suite,
Substance
but-
suite pretty much, and then you use your whatever modeling package you prefer.
So you can use any 3D package. It's not.
Yeah, but you have
fixed.
to like export through 3ds Max. That's the main
Right.
thing. But
Okay.
everything else you can use pretty much at your own discretion.
Yeah.
Kind of like if you get the job done, that's
Yeah.
what you use. And of course within licensing as well.
Yeah.
Whatever they have license for, you use.
So your studio has multiple licenses that you can choose from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So,
Oh,
like for
that's
instance, some people prefer to like sculpt organic assets,
Yeah.
whereas I like to use Houdini to do those kind
Right.
of things. But again, it's like up to the artist's
That's
discretion.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you use Blender?
Yeah, I've recently switched to Blender.
I have to ask
Yeah.
about Blender. It's a hot topic.
It's controversial.
Yeah. Is it controversial, Sebastian, in your studio or in general?
In my studio, yeah, because you always have the diehard like
Right.
Maya or 3ds Max fans.
Yeah.
But I mean, Blender is like one of those weird ones where it does everything.
Yeah.
And before it
that's
was
the
like
thing.
kind of like good at everything but not great, and now it's starting to reach that thing where it's like great at
It
everything.
is reaching a critical point then in the industry. We're hearing that a little bit because that's something we offer the same sort of system of a few different softwares at the university. Yeah, are you guys using Blender, Daisy? Any Blender stuff going on?
I use Blender occasionally myself to add little assets into the project. The things I think that would add a little bit of flair to it, I'll go in and make that, spend a bit of time. But a lot of the extra tools and plugins and things that I use are like Unity assets from the Unity Asset
it.
Store. So because it's a network-based program, I use things like Fishnet and Dedicated Server Kit, and I use a lot of Meta's plugins for like creating compatibility with the Quest and the software that we're making.
Do you think, as you were explaining about client conversations about your pipeline with clients, do you think Blender would be if it's a sort of, it's sometimes seen as a bit of a negative if you're using an amateur software like that? Am I being harsh on Blender?
I don't think so. I think the main 3D modeling software that we use, that my coworker uses, is Autodesk. I believe it is Autodesk Maya.
Yeah.
But they use version 13 and they've never upgraded past that.
Oh, right. That's really old. Yeah.
Yeah, because the models that we're creating inside of VR have to run, essentially, like I said, off of mobile applications. They have to be really highly optimized. So a lot of the advanced tools that comes with the latest software isn't needed, and it just overcomplicates things. So they keep it really, really simple in using older version of software, because of course the file exports are all going to be compatible with the same type, so there's no need for it.
There's a really interesting point if we wanted to talk about the future of tools and pipelines, like changing things. So using an old version of Maya is a good example of that's risky, right? Changing tools. It sounds great that you guys can choose. Maybe the art team will have a lot more flexibility on that, and then the technical team, maybe, as you say, you've got documentation. It's a lot riskier to change things, perhaps, in the technical team.
There are a lot of things that like go along with changing the pipeline. If we were to change even just the axis that we export our skeletons out from, that would create like a decent amount more work on the other side of it for the animators, because that's then
there's a cascade of a bigger team is
300 odd animations a day that we get out, and then all of those would have to be reoriented, which isn't a hugely time consuming process on its own, but when you have to do it 300 times, it's a lot of wasted time.
Yeah, Sebastian, you picked up, I know 20 years ago we did the same thing where you have a pipeline planned for a project, and you guys are sort of fixing a pipeline per project. So is there a period where you investigate new tools in a project?
Yeah, that was before I joined though. But yeah, you have like an R&D sort of period. Where like the artist, normally it'll be like a principal artist or like the expert artist will like try and find out, or the team in general, will try to find out what's the best solution for these problems. Whether it's like destructible assets, like what's the best pipeline for that. How different techniques or different technologies interact, I don't know. Like for instance with Unreal, with the new Unreal 5, there's loads of different questions you have to answer for that. But yeah, stuff like that.
So who's the ultimate decision? Is it an art-driven decision, whatever looks best, or is it a efficiency decision? Is it a cost decision? Is it all of those? It's quite complicated.
Yeah, there's many different facets. So sometimes it will normally start off with like, let's go for like the best quality possible. And then tech artists or will just come in and try to optimize it as much as possible, or be like, we can't do this in order to achieve a certain FPS or a certain fidelity that we're going for, or we can't do this. Yeah, pretty much.
You mentioned tech artists. We should come on. That's a really big area of work. I mean, they're not easy to find. But Daisy, your client-facing, is that something you would? Do clients request changes to your pipeline ever? That's a curious thought.
I wouldn't say they request changes, but they can sometimes be really particular about the type of feature they want added.
Yeah.
I don't talk to clients very often.
No, okay.
I'll have maybe a bi-weekly meeting with them there to explain kind of the things that have gone on in the project over the last couple sprints and stuff, to give them updates about and a little bit of technical insight. But majority of the requests are handled by other employees in the company who are more client-facing. I'm kind of left to sit in my corner and code.
It makes sense, but I mean that's a big clue that maybe everybody's involved in pipelines in some way. Even salespeople right at the end talking to a client. In your business, sounds like everybody's involved in planning the pipeline.
I'll talk to. The only person I talk to super consistently is my other developer, who's a 3D modeler and a programmer like myself, and my boss, who's client-facing and kind of handles sales and things. But I will speak to like the 8 other people in the company very on and off when they have specific needs and requirements, and say, "Oh, hey, do you want to collaborate on this post that we're posting on social media and things like that?" And I'll send over content. So I get to work with a lot of different people and like put different hats on, which is fun.
That sounds good. Yeah, so you really are sharing some of the technical details that you do. I mean, if we compare sort of previous industry practices, we're quite protected. A pipeline that works better than another team's pipeline would be under NDA and protected. So it's really. I mean, Sebastian, is your pipeline protected in that way? You can't really talk to us about it too much, or.
And of course, like you have like the in-house tools that they built specifically for the project, which I kind of can and can't, I guess, because you can talk about the softwares they use. Like they use a lot of Houdini and procedurally based tools in order to build like these vast cities that you explore. But it's still like the fundamental same process that you go through.
Because they're not custom made just for you. So that was 20 years ago in my time we had custom game engines, custom tools. So we would artists would drive that to request what they want, and obviously we wouldn't be able to share those. You can't take those to another studio. But you guys are using things that we recognize, Houdini and different 3D software. So we know those names, and we can. I mean, for students, it's good to hear. They could practice those tools, that you guys use in a studio. But the sort of recipe is different in each studio. But you're using ingredients that we would be familiar with. Is that fair to say? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really interesting for the guys here. What is the future for? I mean, Thomas, what do you think would be the future in where you're working?
For mocap or for my studio?
Yeah, like. Let's go with what your studio. I mean, we don't want to share any secrets from your studio, but do you know of them planning to change to a new technology that we've not heard of? Or
so kind of mocap breaks down into 3 main sort of technology branches. We've got optical mocap, which is what I do, which is the kind of ping pong ball suits that you see in behind the scenes. You've got inertial tracker based suits, which are like Xsense Rococo. They work off having little boxes on you and transmit rotational data for everywhere they are. And then the kind of newer one that's still sort of definitely on the bottom for quality is markerless optical, which is just a couple of phone cameras, and then it uses some AI learning to map you as an animatable character.
We got the magical AI mentioned there. So
it's called Move AI. It's not AI animation, and it's not AI development. It just uses the AI to know where you are. So it's creeping in there as part of a workflow, isn't it? I mean, I think for this discussion with tools, for me, AI, you're probably that's creeping in for all of you, perhaps, is it, in some ways? But is there any AI tools coming in on your team at all?
Well, it's kind of weird because obviously you have like the legal side of it.
Yeah.
So you can't
You're
just
very
go
wary.
out and use.
Is the studio incredibly wary of doing that in that sense?
Well, yeah, because like with AI tools, there's like you have the base that it builds from.
Yeah.
And that base, depending on where it's from,
Yes.
could be copyrighted or not.
Yeah.
But in general, we don't use AI.
No, it is certainly a
least
copyright
quite
issue
creative.
that you guys have to produce all your content yourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We have to produce
Yeah.
everything.
So that's a risky thing. I mean, in tech, it's a little bit. I mean, it's guiding things you would normally do. So, Daisy, is there any AI tools coming into your workflow? The dreaded AI.
I wouldn't say there's specifically AI tools that
Yeah.
are being used because, but we do want to add AI into our system because ships currently in the training simulator, other ships, non-player character ships, are controlled manually. Their routes are mapped manually,
Right.
and if they were able to diverge their own route, it would obviously be much more efficient and be less work
Yes.
for an instructor using the software. So not using machine learning AI,
No.
not these tools like OpenAI and things, but
Yes.
using AI that's been around for decades, like
Yes.
the ghosts in Pac-Man and things like that, and the NPC that runs around in Skyrim, that type of AI, creating it myself and then adding it into the program.
That's a very good point about just a smart NPC. You know, that's gaming technology that has crossed over into other businesses because that's incredibly useful. And you're right, it's been around a long time.
Yeah.
It's very basic AI.
Yes.
Because I think that would be the argument that there are tools out there that do things for us, whether they're they're artificial things that do stuff for us. I'm trying to think of any other future things you're changing in your pipeline. Have you got any news for us on your?
From me?
Yeah.
So something really interesting that's happening recently in the VR space is Meta recently made a release of new open standards.
Right.
So their operating system is going to be able to be run on any VR hardware. So Republic of
Right.
Gaming and Lenovo just announced 2 headsets that are going to run Horizon OS, which is what Meta are calling their new operating system,
Okay.
which means that for developers like myself, it just hardware became much more free to use. The software that I'm making is going to be able to run on basically any hardware available to me in the future. And the thing that's just out of reach right now is hand tracking.
Right.
So to not have to hold controllers, but something that actually wraps around your hand a bit more is going to be a lot more immersive, especially for training situations.
Yes.
The reason it's not very useful right now is because you don't have any sort of response to the things you're touching. There's no haptics or anything. That's why controllers are prevalent in my situations, because when you're pushing a lever and pulling the throttle, you have that fake resistance in
There's
the controller.
actually something in your hand
Yeah.
rather than space. Air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the future, there's loads of companies are now going to have the ability to create hardware and run operating system that is so far ahead from other operating systems available on VR, and it's going to be all under the same roof, the same store. Apps are going to be cross-compatible to different devices, just like a laptop running Windows for the Windows App Store and things like that.
Yeah.
It's going to be really useful.
Except for Apple.
Except for Apple.
Which won't be doing
They
that.
will always be on their own, in
They'll
their own
always
little
be on their
space.
own. Yeah, it just popped into my head that you got the Vision Pro with hand tracking that's very robust.
They're the occlusion culling around the hands, the algorithms for that are much more advanced than anything else we've seen.
So any interest from your company in Apple Vision Pro? Or?
Probably not.
It's
no.
really an outlier, isn't it?
It is. It's very specific and very orientated to developers. I think that want to use it to build, particularly artists. I've seen 3D modeling software be compatible with these headsets, and another one that's being released by Sony, but it's only been announced in Japan, is that they're going to be compatible with creating your own models inside of VR, which is connected up to your computer. Really cool stuff.
There's a really interesting point. I mean, do you think you'll ever be modeling in VR? I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Maya launched in the 90s, because it started in 1998. Believe it or not. So
Maya's older than me.
Yeah, Maya is older than you, Thomas, and we still use it, and it has not changed. As you say, you can use older versions. So why are we still using it in 2024? Why are we 3ds Max began in that predates Windows, by the way. Max, it's a DOS program. So we're using these 1980s and 1990s technology. And in environment art, do you think there's newer tools, not Blender, that you would be using, Sebastian? I mean, I'm really curious if people are going to be modeling in VR. Do you think that will happen?
I think for one, the reason why they use the older software is because it's kind of safe. Like these studios have built these plugins and like these tools for these softwares, and they know that's another reason why they don't update them. Is because they know it works. It won't break if they go into the next project. It's like already a foundation that we have.
It's business, isn't it? You've got to be stable.
And it's all about speed as well. Like, for instance, you don't have weeks and weeks and weeks to work on stuff. You have more like half a day or a day to do certain tasks. But in regards to VR, I've never tried it. I know concept artists like to use it a lot. Mainly because it's quite freeing, and you have to work in like quite a 3D visual space. But for environment, I don't think so.
No. But
maybe in the future.
I've done a bit of modelling in Gravity Sketch. If you want to try that, I recommend it. It's really good. In the sense that it's quite mind-boggling that you're always looking at things on a two-dimensional screen normally when you're modelling, but you're making a 3D thing. So I'm just curious when that breakthrough is going to happen, that we're just finally seeing things 3D, because we're making 3D games. But I guess it depends on the target platform. The consumer is still playing their games in 2D. So until that becomes norm, we won't need to do it, perhaps. But what do you think? This is slightly different to VR, but...
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, in my mind, if you've worked in a 3D package, then you've worked in every 3D package, and it's just kind of finding the one that has the best tools in it for what you need to do. Whether that's Maya, 3ds Max, Blender, whatever you're comfortable with working in, that you can give in the right file format to whoever you need to give it to. I don't really care what you work in.
I think just to say from my experience, I've found that students that don't do 3D have no experience at all of any 3D packages. They really take to 3D modeling in VR. It's so naturalistic. I've seen that happen where people have been very struggling with the concept of Maya or Max, but you show them VR modeling and they take to it straight away. It's a bit like a touch screen versus a mouse. It's just more intuitive. So maybe one day you'll be working with youngsters that come in and show you how to do it in VR. It could happen, right? It could be fun. I think Apple is an outlier, as you say, and AR could be the future. I mean, what you do, motion capture, is kind of AR, isn't it? It's augmenting, it's copying. It's similar to AR tech, isn't it? It's mixing. If you think about it. Yes
and no. Right. If I'm doing like real time data streaming into Unreal, then you could kind of argue that that's AR.
So what's the future of your industry then, Tom? Is it the lack of professional? You're going to have a much reduced cost of equipment, aren't you? Surely that's the future, or is it not happening yet?
So my setup is 48 Vicon cameras at the moment. Right. Each one of those is £19,500. So there's a lot of cost that goes into a setup for an optical studio, which is where the big benefits towards having an inertial based system go, because you're then trading off data quality for price, essentially.
Exactly. So the cost could be, the future of that industry could be cost coming down, maybe? Or do you feel it would be stable?
So. I mean, the money in mocap is just ridiculous. You look at the numbers and they don't look real.
Okay. Good business to get into, guys.
Yeah.
Sell that mocap stuff. So
yeah, seriously. Yeah. If you're ever having to work with mocap, be prepared for a massive bill, like way bigger than you expect.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, an average data cost for just body only data, one person is £8 per second of data. And you're looking at getting a couple hundred animations out and maybe about 180 character seconds from a couple of days of shoot.
Wow.
So that's already...
But here's a question, maybe a few of you can relate, that in the past we've seen this scare of jobs being lost. Now mocap surely was the scare that, we won't need animators anymore. And that's not true, is it?
Yeah, there is quite a big thing still.
Is it still a worry for some people?
Yeah, animators won't sort of openly say it, but it's quite obvious when they've got a bit of animosity towards us for what we do. I was trained as an animator. I can't animate. It's just as an aside, really bad. It's quite funny. but yeah, we're an animation tool.
Yeah.
You know, we're there to sort of do the 900 locomotion animations that you don't want to do, so that you've got a lot more time to do the really cool flair stuff and add the creative part in.
The human part is where
we take a lot of the laborious bullshit work away.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
No, it's cool. So, so the point is, it works hand in hand with animation, and you know, the fear. I remember the worry that would eliminate it.
We've had a lot of sort of scalability on the stuff we can do, so we can do like massive amounts of wire work to get really cool like death animations or like hero poses as they're doing things. We can do matched combat, which is full speed, full weight fight performance. Okay. So we'll have people with like shields and swords just smacking the hell out of each other.
And that's something that's just never going to be easy for traditional animation, is it?
No, I mean, we can do like a full character set combat stuff in a few days to what would take an animator a month to do.
You'd be saying that you're complementing animators.
Massively so, yeah. We're the whole purpose of motion capture is to cut down animation time. Yeah,
and that's the purpose for tools, right? I mean, all the tools you guys are using is to complement each other. That's, you know, and to get a team working together. Sebastian, what about the theory, like procedurally generated stuff? It sounds like you're working on those kind of tools.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Is some of that like scanning, you know, there's a lot of fear of, I mean, I was a car modeler for a while, and nowadays you just scan it, right? Well, no. But, I mean, is there any change in sort of personnel in that area of technology eliminating jobs, you know?
I think so. But it's one of those things where, like, when a new technique comes in, usually that means that allows more freedom for something else. That's where you get the innovation coming in.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
And like, for instance, with scans, someone still has to clean up those scans. Yeah. And that means you have to learn a new skill, a new pipeline, for instance, or a new tool to like clean up those scans. So again, there's another, like you lose one job maybe, but it adds another. And I mean, with games especially, like the industry constantly evolves. Yeah. Like you have to stay up to date.
That's a good point. You're probably adding jobs because there's more steps for a better result.
Yeah, exactly. And there's certain things you can't capture. Yeah. Like you can scan a rock, but you can't scan like museums, for instance, or certain like sci-fi elements. You can't scan those things in. So
not if they don't exist, you can't scan it, can you?
Exactly.
We need people like us to invent this stuff. So we just have, if we were just scanning, we'd have to scan sofas like this. It'd be really boring, wouldn't it? So good points. Is there any, Daisy, is there any changes in your business that might affect jobs or add jobs or something? I mean, it sounds like you're quite a specific business that is that expanding in any way?
It is very, very niche. I think some of the tools that will be created will just free up time for my coworker who's a 3D modeler. So there's something we call a depth mesh in the sea, which is just the seabed, and we use maps of the sea with all the heights and everything, and my coworker has to go and manually add vertices to where the seafloor is, so that we'll know when a ship is running aground or something.
That's quite a serious,
but you need that to be very specific. You're going to always have to manually do that closer to where boats are going to more commonly run aground.
It's a safety issue that someone is taking control of that.
But in more open areas, having those procedurally generated to be pseudo-random would be a great use of freeing up someone's time doing that. So it's not going to remove someone's job, it's just going to free up time for them to focus somewhere else.
I've got a final question for all of you. So do you enjoy that part, the pipeline design, the tool? Is that fun, tweaking all these? Is that a fun thing that you do in your work?
Yeah. I think it is fun because you're adapting, because you're learning something new or a new technology is released, and at the end of the day, it's really exciting. So
that's a big thing to realise that you're still learning, right? You graduate, you do a job, but you're always learning
every single day. Especially going from games into like a completely different industry like maritime. Like I get my ear talked off about boats all the time, but it's still really interesting.
Yeah, that sounds great. You enjoying the pipeline, Sebastian? Like any? are parts of that fun to actually use all these different tools in different
Yeah, I mean,
ways?
especially the first time you learn it.
Yeah.
It's insanely fun. Like
Cool.
you realize it opens up so many different avenues,
Yeah.
and your brain starts thinking, how else can I approach these different situations or scenarios that I may be
Yeah.
in? But yeah, the core principles, stay the same. Pretty
Cool.
much.
Thomas, is it fun for you to any? I mean, you mentioned that you had quite a fixed pipeline where you are with documentation.
I mean, one
and
thing
then-
I haven't really spoken about is my facial pipeline,
Right.
which I've been hammering out a lot the past couple
that's
of
your
months.
own project, is it?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
one of the projects that my company's working on, we're having to sort of really push into facial animation.
Right.
So I've been working with the senior principal animator, I think, on that project to get that facial pipeline in.
You're enjoying
and then
that,
photogrammetry, I
Wow.
had to do pipeline stuff with my senior for that while
Yeah.
we were getting set up to do a different project's load of work. But yeah, setting up those pipelines was a lot of failing, but it was really fun failing to see where things work and where they don't.
I'm glad you said that. That's a really good thing to say, that the failure is the fun.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize that was my favorite thing about the games industry, was the experimentation and the failure. There are many industries where you're not allowed to do that. You know, if you're designing a Boeing aircraft, they're in a bit of trouble at the moment for a few software failures that kill people. So games, it's going to die, and you can fail a lot, can't you?
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So yeah, the failure. It's great to hear you use the two words together, like failure and fun.
Yeah.
And it's really good to hear from you, Thomas, about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things to go into, especially a slightly more technical role, is to find a way to enjoy everything breaking and exploding on you. Because it is just, I mean, it's not anything negative about your work or the way you do it. It's just a new thing to explore and learn from.
Because you're working in the cutting edge of tools, really. It's exciting. So of course it will fail. Yeah, you got to find out. Okay. We're actually nearly out. We're about out of time there. So that was a great summary. Well done, Thomas. Failure is fun.
Yeah.
That's a really good summary of tools. But yeah, it's great to hear different tools, but at the end of the day, how important they are. And I'm really glad to hear you're enjoying that. There's new things to learn. I'm really glad to hear you enjoying that. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, guys. We're going to wrap up there. That's it. Thanks for joining us.